Good morning and welcome, Patriot Radio News Hour. I'm Joe Jaquint, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group, and welcome to Friday. Our toll-free number, 800-951-0592, the website at allamericangold.com. And, man, it is time to get that wealth insurance. Signs everywhere, signs of the great demise coming. Gold's up 15 right now, 16.75. Silver's up 15 cents, 19 and a quarter. The Dow it's treading water right now. Eurozone inflation hits double digits. The Fed's favorite inflation gauge, hotter than expected. We got that and so much more. But Jason, it's kind of going to be a unique day. In the next segment, we're going to have Tim Mooney joining us. He's from Breaking Battlegrounds, a show that's on 1360 that we play Monday through Friday in the evening. He's also from Saving Arizona. And he's going to have inform everybody of these Democratic policies and all these things. And Tim Kelly here, if we're going to take the Senate back, one of the key races is this one here in Arizona. So Jason, he's going to join us in the next segment for a few minutes. But, man, there's a lot of things going on all over the place. Russia now officially annexing that Donbass region as part of Russia now, saying, hey, this is Russian territory, essentially trying to redraw the world map. Inflation's raging everywhere. Pension funds in trouble. I mean, it's just a crazy time.
Yeah, and I think this is probably not nearly as bad as it'll probably get crazier and worse as we move into the rest of this year and next year, Joe. And we'll be here to report it because I think the inflation's got a long way to go, and that's just going to cause all kinds of other problems all across the world. Yeah, and just the retail reports, I guess Facebook's not retail, but Facebook, they announced a hiring slowdown. That slowdown has now turned into job cuts, a complete hiring freeze for Meta, and the fancy word for layoffs. We're evaluating all levels of the company. Lyft announcing the same thing, an immediate stop to all hiring at Lyft. We had bad numbers out of Nike today. Bed Bath & Beyond, sales were down 28%. So, Jason, we're starting to build here. We haven't seen it yet in jobs, but sure looks like there's momentum here. At least hiring looks like it's at least stopped if the firing hasn't begun yet. Right. One of the numbers you've been reporting is lower expected hiring for the holiday season. So I don't know how the holiday hiring season is going to affect these numbers for what the Fed's going to do coming into the next few months. I mean, they could be kind of a difficult situation. If there is hiring for the holidays, Joe, does that count or doesn't it, Yeah, and again, 80%, according to the Federal Reserve, they do these studies, and apparently they were reaching out to CFOs, and they said that 80% of firms expect cost pressures to persist into next year, essentially saying just what we've been saying. Hey, all these CFOs are saying more inflation is still to come, Jason, which just means these rates got to go higher, which puts more pressure on equities, puts more pressure on jobs. It really just takes money out of people's pockets. Yeah, it puts more pressure on everybody. That's just what inflation does. It's theft. And the fact that we're at this place in time where this inflation is this big should have never happened. I mean, we have the history, Joe. The whole entire century, the 1800s, there was essentially no inflation. So if they pretend like this is something that happened out of their control, I do not fall for that. Yeah, how about this news out of China this morning? Reuters is now reporting that China has told all of its state-owned banks
to get ready to sell dollars and buy renminbi to prop up their currency. So Jason, this is another escalation of foreign governments that have large amounts of treasuries. The Chinese government now telling its bank, hit the sell button.
Who's going to buy them, Joe? Who's buying all this stuff? Who's got the billions of dollars? Because when China and Japan start selling, they sell them by the $50 to $100 billion at a time sort of situation.
Yeah, and again, it is getting really, really interesting. Obviously, in the last couple of days after the crisis, the currency crisis in the EU, there's been people running into the bond markets, for quote-unquote safety. But, Jason, the overwhelming supply of it is really starting to weigh here, especially if all of these other countries and all of these other currencies start to fight back against the dollar, because let's face it, when your currency weakens, that makes inflation worse. I mean, the Eurozone just came out with a 10% inflation print today.
Yeah, and one thing I'm thinking about, Joe, is during the 2008 housing crash, when banks and countries were buying those bonds, those treasuries back then, the 10-year ones are kind of expiring at this point now. So maybe they've got some sort of plan for that. They keep talking soft landing. Well, maybe because all those 10-year ones are from back in 2010, 11, 12, 13, so on. Those are expiring. So maybe
those were expiring. Yeah,
yep.
Good point.
Yep.
And expiring at 0.5%. Now they've got to buy them at 4%. Gets a lot more expensive, doesn't it? Patriot Radio News Hour. We're going to be back after the break. From Tim Moody's going to be joining us, Saving Arizona. Welcome back here, Joe and Jason, and we've got Tim Mooney joining us here from Saving Arizona. And Tim, you guys are getting ready to release an infomercial here in Arizona exposing the voting record of Mark Kelly.
Oh.
Do we have Tim?
Let me, hang on one second. He is not there, Joe.
Oh, well, I guess we won't have him then. So,
okay.
Just really quickly, just to let you know what they've got going on for everybody on the CW61 in Metro Phoenix, Saturday, October 1st and October 8th from 11:30 to noon, and Sunday, October 2nd and 9th from 6 to 6:30. By the way, those in Tucson can catch it from 7:30 to 8 and 3:30 to 4 on the 1st and 10:30 to 11th on the 8th. But just Mark Kelly's voting record, obviously, Jason, Arizona, one of those battleground states, to see if the Republicans can take back the Senate. Right now, if you want to believe the polls, looks like Kelly's ahead over Masters. But check it out, guys. You got to be educated on what these guys are really up to. But, Jason, getting back to the data coming out today, Chicago PMI plunged into contraction. It now joins the New York Fed Index, the Philly Fed Index. Now the Chicago PMI down to 45.7. And that's one of those numbers where 50 is flat. Anything below 50 is contraction. So it went from 51.8 to 45. So a pretty big drop. And really, new orders fell at a faster pace. Employment fell. Inventories rose. So that's that horrible scenario, right, where orders slowed down. I slowed down the hiring, yet I got all this inventory, Jason.
Yeah, that's right, Joe. And just for the guest, that if he's listening and you want to try back in there, hopefully maybe we can get a text to him and get him on later in the show. Just try back in. I think there was just a little snafu, but yeah, you're right, Joe. There's these are things we need to look at and be aware of. Love doing the gold and silver shows because when you see all this market craziness, what's getting ready to unfold, it just makes me feel a a sense of security that, I've got something sitting aside that I don't have to worry about all this stuff that's going on.
Yeah, look at the Eurozone today. Inflation now 10%. That was above forecast. So Jason's been speculating, right? We're going to get that inflation data here in a couple weeks. And Jason, you're telling everybody, listen, be worried about a miss to the high side, right? And a miss to the high side means, hey, the Fed may have to get even more aggressive. I don't know if that's going to happen, but if the Eurozone is any indication, that could very well be. They were expecting 9.7. It came in at 10%. And really, Jason, they do the same tricks we do. Well, take out this, take out that, core this and that. Everything was above expectation in the Eurozone. And then to make it worse, we actually had some inflation data out here as well. And that one came in hotter than expected. This is the Fed's favorite inflation indicator, right? This is, in other words, the indicator that actually doesn't track inflation came in hotter than expected. According to the Federal Reserve, it was up 0.3. They were expecting it to be, up 0.2, far above the 0.2% decline they were expecting, Jason.
That's how inflation works. People don't expect what it is and how severe it can be. You think everything's going to be normal. You go to the grocery store, you do all these things, Joe, that is your normal part of life, and you just expect things to always kind of somewhat be similar to the same. But inflation is one of those things where most people just don't really get it until it's like just on top of you and happening right on your head. And that's why, this inflation numbers, you got all these guys on Wall Street and on the television stations and, yakking about this and that and making predictions. But we have a history to show us, how severe that inflation really can get, and when it hits these, like the Weimar Republic, we know that people aren't expecting, it's not going to be that bad, and until suddenly you have a wheelbarrow full of cash to go buy something, and the wheelbarrow's worth more than the stack of cash that's in it. So nobody wants to think that we could go there or that the world is going there. And I don't know if we're going to have hyperinflation, but Joe, to me, I don't see why there's any indication that this is not going to get worse. Why is there any indication it's not going to get worse? I haven't seen anything that says it's going to get better soon.
I keep looking. And again, you look at what they call the PCE. This came in at 6.2%. They were hoping it would be 6%. So, right, that's 0.2 hotter. The core PCE, that's the Fed's favorite number, by the way. That came in at 4.9%. Jason, they were hoping, and I say hope, because there was nothing really in the data outside of cheaper gasoline prices that would warrant that. That was 2%. They were hoping for 4.7. It came in at 4.9. The month over month was up 0.3, and they were hoping for a 0.1% drop. And again, this kind of just signals, hey, everything is still getting more expensive despite the Fed's best efforts.
Exactly, Joe. I think our guest is coming in, but just before that, Joe, just what do you think now the CPI might look like in a couple of weeks?
You know what? It's going to be above 8.
Yep. 8.5 is that's going to be. I think it's 8.5 is going to dictate whether they go big on that rate hike.
Yeah, 8.5 will not be a good number. Anything 8.5 or higher, not a good number. But I think the hope of it being below 8, I think, may be gone. I think we've got Tim now, Tim Mooney from Saving Arizona. Tim, I apologize. I'm Joe, my partner Jason. We had a few technical difficulties. Welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Hey, great to be with you guys. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you. And Tim, your group, you've got a big slate of infomercials coming out for Arizonans so they can see Mark Kelly's voting record. Obviously, him and Blake Masters, a very contested race for the U.S. Senate.
Yeah, look, this is a very important race. This race will probably make the difference on who's in the majority. And that critical first vote, when you get to the United States Senate, of who are you going to be voting for the Senate Majority Leader, and that is the critical vote, because all else dictates from that. Mark Kelly's voting record in Washington, D.C. is 94% with the Biden administration. If you think the Biden administration is doing a good job, you're going to like Mark Kelly. If you think the Biden administration is doing a bad job, there's no reason in the world why you should be voting for Mark Kelly.
Where did Mark Kelly stand on hiring all these IRS agents and all that? I'm sure he's voting with the Biden administration.
He has, and this is the IRS agents is really amazing tale to be told. Right now, there are 79,000 employees at the IRS. Now, that's twice as many as are in the Coast Guard, trying to monitor 95 miles of shoreline. That is 4 times more than are on the border and the Border Patrol, which Mark Kelly voted to reduce the number of agents there. But we're going to go from 79,000 IRS agents and add an additional 87,000 more. And those IRS agents are about one thing: finding more money. And so I'm sure they've got one just for you. And that is a huge difference. I mean, that's going to just do nothing but cause havoc among small businesses, or if you're an independent contractor. If you're a one-guy plumber, guess what? IRS is going to come knocking on your door.
Yeah, this is definitely, the small business guys are going to be a primary target, and same with those middle class and upper middle class voters. They're going to be targeted as well. Not to mention, listen, the Biden administration, Janet Yellen's been out talking about the need to raise taxes, and you can just guarantee that Kelly's going to be voting for those tax increases as well.
That's exactly right. Look, he is in lockstep with Biden, lockstep with Chuck Schumer. Here's my question. He votes 94% of the time with Chuck Schumer. Why does New York get 3 U.S. senators? Because that's in essence what Mark Kelly is. He's the New York senator. He's not an Arizona senator, because he's voting in lockstep with Chuck Schumer. And that's for nothing but bigger government, more intrusive government, more costly government, less efficient government. So we think, though, it takes more than 30 seconds to go over the voting record for Mark Kelly. We don't want to see 30-second TV ads. We're taking a half hour, 30 minutes, to go through the voting record of Mark Kelly and expose exactly why and where he has been in total lockstep with this administration, and look at what it has wrought. So starting tomorrow, October 1st, Saturday, it will be on CW 61 in the Metro Phoenix area, starting at 11:30 tomorrow morning until 12, and again on October 8th, next Saturday, a week from tomorrow, and on Sunday, October 2nd and October 9th, between 6 and 6:30, a half an hour going through systematically. This is what Mark Kelly is all about. Forget what he says in Arizona. What does he do in Washington, D.C.? And what he does in Washington, D.C. is back up every single day the Biden administration and their higher taxes, higher inflation, bigger government, more IRS agents, less on the border, straight down the line.
And Tim, like you said, this isn't a 30-second info commercial, ad commercial. This is 30 minutes where you go really in depth and really truly lay out the facts of what this guy's voting for.
That's exactly right. Because you know what? How he votes in the United States Senate makes a difference for your family and for your bank account and your retirement and your kids' future. Did you know, for instance, that when Mark Kelly had the vote about whether federal tax dollars going to education should go to teach critical race theory in kindergartens and grade schools, where was he? He was in favor of that, teaching critical race theory to kindergartners in grade school. Did you know on abortion? He is in favor of abortion right up until the moment of birth. There are only 7 countries in the world who stand for that. He is every bit as radical left as you can imagine.
Tim, I'd like to thank you for joining us today. We appreciate that. All of our listening audience, starting tomorrow, Saturday, October 1st and October 8th, CW 61 from 11:30 to noon. They're going to break down Mark Kelly's voting record. They're going to do it again Sunday, October 2nd and October 9th from 6 to 6:30 p.m. Get educated, know what these people are voting for, because we know how it is. And all these politicians, they say one thing, and then they get up to Washington, D.C., and all of a sudden they're voting for all these things they told you they were never going to. Find out the truth before you cast your votes. Tim Mooney from Saving Arizona, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, guys. Good Friday to you.
Jason and I, we're coming right back with more with the Patriot Radio News Hour. 800-951-0592. Jason, just things escalating here. Russia today annexing that Donbass region of Ukraine, now considering it part of Russia. Ukraine has applied for a emergency NATO membership. The Russians have also squarely pointed the finger at, the Nord Stream pipelines. Russia today, Vladimir Putin says America did it, and everybody knows they did it.
I don't know that anybody who did it. I'm just
right. I'm not saying that.
Who
That's what
knows?
he's saying.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, anytime someone goes out there and in the public eye and starts pointing fingers nowadays, Joe, it's like I just the first thing I think is, well, I might just have to wait a little longer until some actual information comes out, and even then, are we ever going to know, Joe?
Well, yeah. Why is this going to be one of those things that seemingly we'll never know who did it? But in the meantime, Reuters is reporting that sources within OPEC are going to cut oil production on October the 5th. That is when they end their meeting. They have OPEC meetings starting on Monday, but on October 5th, they're expecting up to 1 million barrels a day of oil production being cut by all. And OPEC and Reuters is saying there appears to be clear agreement amongst all OPEC numbers on this production cut.
Yeah, because that makes sense, doesn't it? Pipelines blow up, so we're going to cut production. They didn't even factor that in, I guess, right, Joe?
Right? I mean, again, all of this stuff, I had some guy called in and said, well, hey, Germany reported, and it's a little old now, but they reported they had 85% of their normal gas storage, and isn't that good? And I'm like, no. First of all, these are the problems. That is decades low inventory. They paid huge prices for it, obviously, as we see the Eurozone inflation at 10%. And now the problem is they blew up a pipeline when they at least when they first reported that 85%, Nord Stream 1 was at 40% capacity, got cut to 20% capacity. Now it's at 0% capacity. And the problem is now when it gets cold, that first real big cold snap, because inventories are so low, it's at 80 or 85%. That's a huge difference. People go, well, that's pretty good. Nah, it's a big difference. When that gas starts being drawn down, you're going to get bigger spikes in price because the traders are going to be like, man, we don't have inventory. What if we run out? We gotta make it even higher so they don't run out. That's the whole point, right, Jason? They'll set the price as high as it needs to be so they don't run out.
Yes, that's correct, Joe. And we know there's a major change economically coming to the world in the months or even the next years to come. And every time they've done this, the world has to be living in some sort of fear or some sort of worry or some sort of situation so that they can move it there. So, I mean, pipelines blow up, we're still going to cut. It just sounds like they're going to make this situation to come to fruition, Joe. We just don't know the timing. So it's ridiculous. Let's just take it this way. Joe and I are selling gold, and we're doing, we like to sell as much as we can, and some big competitor in Colorado here just completely shut down. Well, Joe and I, we don't. Oh, I guess we have no interest in picking up those customers, Joe. We'll just run away from those customers. I mean, that's essentially what you just said on the air, Joe.
Yeah, and again, part of the plan, right? It seems a little bit strange to, and now again, I know you can't substitute oil for natural gas. If you got a natural gas plant, it needs natural gas. But once again, just think about where OPEC's at, and they're like, hey, we've got inflation here too, right? We everything costs more here too. We need more dollars for oil. We need oil to be $90, $100 plus a barrel to make ends meet. So we're just gonna cut production and kind of almost, man, remember back in the day that Eric used to talk about it all the time, the $22 price band. When oil got above $22, OPEC would produce more. When it got below $22, they would cut. Essentially, what OPEC is saying today is, hey, the new price band, $90. Right? If prices are below $90, we're going to cut oil production.
Yep. I mean, Joe, we think we lightly mentioned it yesterday that, or maybe it was when we were on the phone, and I was like, look, the oil price per barrel is in the 80s, or it's even tried to dip into the 70s. But the gas prices, and you said in Arizona, look how they're going up. And I was like, oh, it sure seems like a silver, where the silver spot price is this low number, but everyone has to pay $30, $35 an ounce to get their hands on it. It sure seems like that something really strange is going on there, Joe.
Yeah, and again, all of these things that we're watching here just make this thing, as we talk about where is inflation going, Jason, and it's so hard. How do you say it's going lower? I don't know how.
Exactly. The numbers you mentioned earlier on the show, and I look at that CPI number because to me that seems like the one that gets the most traction, that the most people seem to react to, and it's coming in a couple of weeks here in October, and if that comes in 8.5 or 8.7 or 9.1, and Joe's talking about how a 0.5% rate hike is kind of on the dinner plate, so to speak. There's no way it'll be a 0.5 point. If he comes in at like 7.9, Joe, or 7.7, however they want to present that number, then I can see that 0.5 point. I can see that because they'll claim that they're in the right direction, but sure doesn't look like it's going there, Joe. It sure looks like it's just going to be a lot more pain to come, and they're going to keep on. So is this kind of like pulling the Band-Aid off slowly, right?
So CNBC, get this. They're talking about rents in the largest cities and what's happening. They said, ready for this, rent fell for the first price drop in almost a year. It was a whopping $10 a month. And they said, by the way, that's an outlier. Get ready for rent prices to continue to go higher well throughout 2023. And saying that they expect rent prices to grow up to another 8.5% next year. Again, I don't know where the lower inflation comes from. Patriot Radio News Hour. We'll be back after the break. 800-951-0592. Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason. Gold's up another $14 today. $16.74. Silver's up almost 16 cents. $19.30. The Dow just went negative again. Jason, we're starting to see gold and Wall Street separate here over the last few days, where they've been in this pattern where if Wall Street was down, gold was down, and we've been in this pattern for about the last 6 months. The last few days, it's starting to go the other way as all of these things start breaking. And I think we're going to be setting ourselves up here for that run. We've been waiting for this gold run to close out the year. I think it's starting to happen. Right now, $20 gold pieces. I'm going to put them on sale today at $2,050. But if we get a close above 1670, that's a technical support level. We close above that. That sets us up to go back to that 1,700 range. And, Jason, we know once we cross 1,700, $20 gold pieces are going to be $2,100 plus.
Yeah, not to mention the premiums aren't coming down, so that just makes it more difficult.
No, that's another good point. Premiums almost every day now continuing to rise. So $20 gold today, $2,050. So let's just break down Jason's theory that CPI is going to be hotter than people think. The number one item in CPI is housing. Okay, this what they call rent equivalent. It's actually not even housing. It's a bogus number, but this is what they use, rent equivalent. According to the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, they expect year-over-year price growth in this rent equivalent to go from 5.8%, which was what they were saying the number was in June, to 8.4% by May of 2023. So that's like almost a 30% increase, and that is by far the single biggest item in CPI is that number, and according to the Dallas Federal Reserve, this number is going to get much worse. Mooney Analytics is out saying they expect rents to grow between 5 and 7% between now and May of next year.
Yeah, that definitely bodes for higher inflation. However, I mean, we do know housing prices, actual prices are coming down in many areas. But you just mentioned that the rents are higher, and they get that housing number from
flat out. You read the article. You know what? Here's what they say, Jason. To your point, interest rates keep going higher, which makes these monthly payments unpayable. People can't afford the mortgage payment, so they're going to be forced to rent.
Correct, and then the way they get that number, is that the one where they ask homeowners what they rent it out for? Is it that number? Is how
yes.
they so?
Yes,
I think homeowners are still going to say, "Hey, it's more," but I mean, how severe will that number be? So maybe they might catch a break on that one, Joe. We'll see.
We'll see, but again, these are indicators now, and we've kind of reached the stress point, haven't we?
I think so.
We're seeing, hey, the Fed's raising rates is now causing markets to break, and this is why I think all of a sudden we're seeing gold separate, right? The Dow's falling, but yet gold continues to rally. This has been different than in the past. They're talking now about coordinated efforts. The other central banks making coordinated efforts to slow the increase of the dollar. Look at the Eurozone, 10% inflation. How can Europe not raise rates by, I mean, obviously they should be raising it 2 or 3%, but at least by 1% based on that number today.
Yeah, Joe, I think you're right. And markets breaking, I guess there's different ways of looking at it, too, because, I remember having like a glass I used to like to drink out of, and then it came out of the dishwasher, had that crack in it. But I was like, I could still drink out of that thing. You know, it broke, but it's still usable. I kind of feel like that's where our markets are. They're breaking. They really should be replaced with something better. But until the whole thing shatters from dropping off the table or something, we're just going to live with a lower standard of markets and a higher cost and inflation and then the higher rates. It's Joe, on a normal year, a decade or 2 decades ago, this stuff would be really, really bad. But because what we've gone through with the housing market and what looks like is still coming at us, I think people are just accepting all of these bad things and just trying to move on.
Well, we're getting some more data here. Remember, earnings season's just a couple of weeks away, and I told you we're going to start getting all these pre-announcements. Right, first we heard from Nike, Bed Bath & Beyond. Now we're hearing from Rent-A-Center. The crashing right now. They've pulled guidance. They said a complete collapse of economic conditions. They're saying it's so bad Americans can't afford to rent any longer, and Rent-A-Center says it needs to pull guidance. Their stock now down over 20%. And Jason, they've made significant cuts to what they expect earnings to be and significant cuts to what they expect revenues to be. And I think we're going to start seeing this in earnest next week.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder how many of their items are coming back permanent. You know, it is Rent-A-Center, right, Joe? They may have people basically not paying, because I know how that works, right? If you can't pay for it, you just turn it back into them. So I wonder how that's going to affect the cost of renting it to the next guy. Because if the first guy can't rent it, and then they get more of the stuff back, obviously, well, I guess better lower. They might have to lower their prices, huh, Joe?
Yeah, and again. We'll see how this plays out, because, I always just go to, and I've been saying it now all week, it's all about jobs now. How bad this thing gets is all about jobs. Gold up here, like I said, it's almost 1675. The Dow is now down 100 points. It was up over 100 points a few minutes ago. Final segment of the week coming up. 800-951-0592. U.S. $20 Liberties on sale today at $2,050. I mean, we started the week at $19.95, and now here at that technical $16.70 level, Jason, we close above that level. That puts us back at that, 1700s, the next target, which really isn't that much of a technical number, more of a psychological number. But at that price, we know, right? We know now that, back above $2,100 we go with gold, and it just seems like we're in this big feedback loop. China, following Japan, right? Japan, we're selling treasuries to protect the yen. China ordering its banks sell treasuries to buy the renminbi. England, the UK, that's what they had to do, right? They did the same thing. They started buying their own treasuries to try to keep their currency from collapsing. And at the same time, the Federal Reserve is supposed to be selling treasuries.
Yeah. Who's going to buy it all, Joe? Who's going to buy it all?
When the liquidity dries up, I think the UK gave us a real good example. Guess who's going to get punished first? In the UK, right? Pensions.
Yep.
And their system and our system, right? We learned our banking system from them. Pensions right now, if you got pensions out there, I'm not feeling so great. I'm not telling you, hey, don't panic. But again, this is what was happening in Europe. The pension funds by design hold a lot of treasuries. And when those yields shoot up, that's not good for them.
Yeah, that's not good. That's not good. I mean, these things, and I don't know where the retiring cycle is, but it seems like they've got these cycles of when people are, a large amount of them are retiring, Joe. So why do I get the feeling we're moving into one of those time frames where...
It's funny you brought that up. I didn't even think about it. We've been on this cycle for about 7 or 8 years, right? The baby boom cycle.
Yep.
This year, I didn't even think about it. This year, the cycle grew. In other words, more people retiring this year than in the previous 7 or 8 years during the start of the boom. And is it coincidence or not? We've got the worst equities market in going back to the financial crisis as the largest number of people start retiring. Well, why do I get the feeling a lot of them are like, maybe I'm not retiring?
Like that George Carlin piece we played. Which is different than this, but a little bit. But he's like, and then they're coming for your Social Security. They want their money back, right? They're coming for your pensions. They want their money back. That's what it feels like always when it comes to retirement money like that, Joe.
And that's really a good way of looking at it. It's a little simplistic, but it's true. And again, I highlight Janet Yellen out there. Of course, she was telling us, remember, go big? She was like, oh, yeah, let's borrow all kinds of money because it's free. Yeah, well, it's almost free. Of course, it's not free now. And so now what's her suggestion? Hey, we got to raise taxes. Right, here we are. Everybody with an IQ higher than room temperature knows we've got runaway inflation. We're in a recession, and it's getting worse. And her brilliance is raise taxes.
Right, and with the dollar this strong, Joe, and we didn't cover it again today. It sure looks attractive to just sell all your stuff off and just buy dollars with it. And why do I get the feeling about the time that everybody decides, well, I'll just hold it in cash, then the dollar goes tumbling down here in the near future.
Well,
right, Joe?
That's what people are worried about, is a coordinated effort possibly for all these other countries saying, hey, we got to save ourselves, which means an all-out assault on the U.S. dollar. It's crazy to think about, but this is the situation the whole world's in. 800-951-0592.